Mr Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I rise to speak on behalf of my party and perhaps unsurprisingly to oppose the motion. And I do that not because I oppose anybody, not because I oppose anyone on how they choose to live their lives, but because we support something. And what we support, Mr Speaker, is the institution of marriage and the traditional, long-standing, centuries-old definition of marriage. The premise, Mr Speaker, of this motion that the activities and a vote in the Irish Constitutional Convention should have any bearing on us here in this Assembly is quite frankly ludicrous. It is as ludicrous as it is to hear a Sinn Fein member use the words of a British minister to try to make their case. Why should those of us in Northern Ireland who oppose the redefinition of marriage care what the Irish Constitutional Convention says on the matter? What is agreed in the Irish Republic is of no concern to us here in Northern Ireland, any more than what we agree here in the Northern Ireland Assembly should be of any concern to them. What the Irish decide to do on this issue, Mr Speaker, is a matter for them. We decide what happens in Northern Ireland. Members of this House can go and join and take seats in the Irish Constitutional Convention all they want, and they can vote on this and they can vote on that and they can vote on the other, but they can't expect their votes there to have any bearing on what happens in this place. We also, Mr Speaker, oppose the Alliance Amendment, an amendment which proposes to redefine marriage and does nothing to offer protection to churches. It is an amendment, Mr Speaker, which is more about patching over the well-publicised differences internally within the Alliance Party than it is about uniting this House. Perhaps this time, unlike the last occasion whenever this issue was debated in October last year, members of the Alliance Party who were physically present in this building will actually this time be able to make it to the lobbies and vote. Perhaps the last time they didn't hear the division bell. Perhaps they thought that the journey from their offices down into the lobbies was just a little too taxing for them that day. We'll await with interest, Mr Speaker, to see how they vote today on this issue. Supporters of redefining marriage often argue that it is an issue of equality. Indeed, we heard the proposer of the motion use that very argument. But let me lay out the facts, and facts are pesky things, and they don't tend to change. Article 16 of the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights, as upheld by the UN Human Rights Committee, defends a traditional view of marriage. In European law, Article 12 of the European Convention on Human Rights also upholds this definition, and the Court has deemed the definition of marriage not a matter of equality, but rather a matter for individual state law. The Northern Ireland Human Rights Commission, not an organisation than those of us on this side of the House are prone to quoting and agreeing with, has highlighted the international treaties which protect the right to marry, but has conceded that the restriction of marriage to opposite-sex couples does not violate the international standards, and this is clear from both the international treaties and the jurisprudence of the European Court of Human Rights and the United Nations Human Rights Committee. So therefore, Mr Speaker, it is clear. People may not like it. It is clear. No. The UN, Europe and our own Human Rights Commission all agree that it is not an issue of equality. I am in no doubt, Mr Speaker, that there will be some who will seek to distort, and no doubt there will be some in this House who will seek to distort the views of my party and the opposition of ordinary folk out there in Northern Ireland to the redefinition of marriage. I was always taught that tolerance was when you disagreed with somebody, but you respected their right to have a different position to you. Today, unfortunately, it would seem that for some, whenever you fail to fall in line with their thinking, that you are the intolerant one. I have heard opponents of redefining marriage portrayed as bigots. I've heard them painted as narrow-minded, and I've heard them pigeonholed as not part of the mainstream. They're nothing of the sort. They are good, ordinary people who care deeply about the society in which they live. They are from every walk of life. They are members of the Presbyterian Church, they're members of the Catholic Church, they're members of no church at all. Yes, I will, yeah.
The member agreed that previously this place debated the civic forum, and it would be incumbent on those members to listen to the civic voices coming from our churches on this issue.
The member's not a minute.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the member for his intervention. In fact, he's right. These are people who are not some tiny minority. On this issue, they are the mainstream. I applaud the likes of the Catholic Church and the Presbyterian Church and indeed others for coming out in defence clearly and unequivocally for the traditional definition of marriage. And I commend the bravery of Father Owen Gorman for articulating his observation that his parishioners are starting to look elsewhere when it comes to politics and people who represent their views. The members opposite, Mr. Speaker, can choose to ignore the deeply held views of people who have voted for their parties forever. They can even snub their noses and defy the leadership of the churches that in many cases they have been lifelong members of, and indeed senior members of. But we in the DUP will continue to oppose any redefinition of marriage, and unashamedly do so. We oppose the motion.